Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and we're back once again for another Armored Warfare replay. This time on PvE Operation Hardcore, we have Operation Perseus. And today I'm going to be talking about the M1 AGDS, which is actually a concept anti-air vehicle.
NPAA forces are gunning for the missiles we've hidden out here.
That would actually run...
plan on using the missiles against the capital. I'll send you the silo coordinates. You must stop them.
Now the AGDS
Enemy forces are moving towards
was
the
a project that would actually run parallel to the ADATs. So I'm going to actually be posting some links in the video description. I'm going to post a link to my M60 replay because there's going to be, I'm going to highlight something there. And I'm also going to post a link with the ADATs replay because actually the Striker ADATs or the ADATs turret would actually run parallel to the AGDS turret. Now, the ADATs turret was based on being mounted on a lightweight vehicle, while the AGDS turret here was actually more geared towards being mounted on the M1 Abrams hull. But let's dive in and talk about it here a little bit as I raise my satellite here and begin launching ATGMs at some of these heavier vehicles like the Challenger 2. The M1 Air Ground Defense System, or AGDS, was a concept for a dual-purpose anti-air, anti-tank system. The concept was used the M1 Abrams hull with a redesigned turret. The idea was to find a cost-effective approach for an air defense vehicle that would still have anti-tank capabilities. This project would ran parallel with the ADATs turret design. In fact, it was actually part of the same project. The turret would have been armed with a twin-length 35mm Bushmaster Mark III autocannon, which you see me using here, and 2 racks of 6 MIM 146A missiles. The missiles was a dual-purpose missile that could be used against aircraft as well as tanks. The MIM 146A missiles had an effective range of 10 to 12 kilometers, 6.2 to 7.4 miles for my American audience.
Enemy spotted at the southern silo. Get ready to cross
the MIM 146A is a laser-guided missile. Once the target is spotted and locked on, the missile is fired. The missile then uses laser to a laser system to track and engage the target. Of course, once the missile impacts the target, it goes boom. Industry term. The missile can penetrate up to 600 plus millimeters of rolled homogeneous steel armor, with room to be improved over time. This was actually at the time of the documentation. This amount of penetration at the time was more than sufficient to penetrate composite armor. So that's quite a manly missile right there. While the turret was designed for the Abrams, it could have been mounted on other tracked vehicles as well. The turret has a radar system, which you see me using earlier, and had a range of 25 kilometers, 15.5 miles for my American audience.
Identify target.
Merca. The turret would have had FLIR and a laser rangefinder as well. The turret was also designed to have the same ballistic protection of that as the M1 Abrams of the time, which would have just been, when the concept was put out, it would have been just the plain M1 Abrams or M1 A1. I couldn't quite narrow down a good time of when this concept was done. It was also to have blow-off panels for increased crew survivability. The vehicle would be manned by a crew of 3, a commander, a gunner, and a driver. All in all, the project would be canceled in the early 90s alongside the AGDS project. Basically, when the Cold War ended, for some odd reason, we just didn't see a purpose for a dual-purpose vehicle anymore. Now, that being said, I still find it kind of weird, as over the years, there's still been demands for a dual-purpose anti-air, anti-tank vehicle, but we've never taken the plunge to make it. Now, that also being said, as I said a bit ago, this turret was actually designed for the M1 Abrams tank, even though it could have been mounted on other vehicles, possibly. Probably like the M60, as you can see if you look. There is the M60-2000, which would mount the Abrams turret onto an M60 hull, which would have been a very good option. Personally believe that at the time, there's kind of two different standards here. The M1 Abrams was an expensive tank at the time, and not all M60s had been replaced yet. So mounting this on an M1 Abrams kind of feels like a moot point. This concept was actually around, would have been worked on during Desert Storm, or around the time of Desert Storm, and as I said, we saw M60s in service, which is why I'm going to highlight my M60 video, as that we actually had the M60 in service for many years, even after Desert Storm. But that being said too, real quickly here, I raised the radar once again, so that increases my spotting through camo. Now, with that being said, the benefit of having this mount on an M1 would have been the increased armor protection, giving increased survivability if the vehicle is attacked. It is an anti-tank vehicle, after all. And it would have gave familiarity with parts. So it's kind of a two-edged sword here. Do you use the expensive Abrams hull that is supposed to be replacing the M60, but hasn't fully replaced the M60 yet at the time? Or do you mount this onto something else? My personal opinion, I probably would have mounted on the M60 at the time if I was the guy making the call on adopting said vehicle or not. However, all in all, at the end of the day, it was decided that the vehicle was not necessary and it would be scrapped. Now, this vehicle would never even reach prototype stage. The turret design itself never got off the drawing boards. However, on the drawing board, there was a lot of information given about the vehicle, as essentially, once again, M1 hull with a redesigned turret. Armaments have been used on other things, and even other things in game, such as the Striker AGDS uses the MIM missiles, which are quite powerful missiles. This is a Tier 9 premium tank destroyer. Think of it as kind of like the Terminator, but it's definitely not as good as the Terminator. The problem is you basically have the Tier 6 M1 Abrams hull, and you have basically a Tier 8 Abrams turret in the case of armor protection. Maybe Tier 7. I can't quite recall off the top of my head. But basically the fact is unlike the Terminator, the armor on this thing is really lame. And it should be used as a sniper as you're seeing it used here. It is definitely not a frontline tank. The camo rating is not very good. Well, why is that? Well, because you're using a main battle tank hull. You're big. Also, with that being said, the spotting's not bad. There's vehicles with better spotting at this tier, but it's functional. Firepower wise, it's not a bad vehicle. The missiles are kind of weird because they launch up in the air and come down. We got the W here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Striker ADATs as I pull up my video results. Hopefully you enjoy the radar beeping. Come on. As OBS at this moment doesn't want to work with me. There we go. Finally got OBS open. We'll talk a little bit more about the Striker ADATs. It is a Tier 9 premium tank destroyer. If I recall, this was introduced through a loot crate. I actually got it through the Age of Rage battle path. I recall I got it from the level 52 crate. So that was a really nice surprise to get out of that crate. And actually, it really wasn't a bad choice. It does pretty good at making credits as Tier 9 Premium. Not as good as a Tier 10 Premium, but not bad either. I do find it as a fun vehicle to play. I don't know if I'd take it into PvP just because of the weird way the missiles work. They're not a top-down missile. They don't penetrate the roof of armor. They just kind of hit where you're aiming, sort of at times. Sometimes that gets a little weird. So the aiming's a little weird to it. And sometimes when the missiles fire off, they just kind of fire off in the space and they never come back down to target. Now, MyCom has made great leaps and bounds towards fixing that. However, it's still not quite fixed, unfortunately. So actually a couple missiles there I got were wasted. Another problem I find with this vehicle, past the armor, past the spotting range, and past the weird way the missiles work, it actually doesn't have a lot in the way of armor. So I've actually been using the commander from the Warlords of the Wasteland battle path, which is Elisa, and she allows vehicles to carry extra ammo. Plus has that Mysterious Stranger, which lets me get a little bit additional damage from time to time. All in all, I wouldn't say the vehicle's worth it, but it's fun. And if you're a collector or if you're looking for something different to play, I would actually recommend this vehicle. If you're just looking for a really competitive Tier 9 for like PvP or Global Ops, I really wouldn't recommend the vehicle at all, as that there's better options out there. Even still, the Terminator to me at Tier 8 is a better option over this in the realm of being a competitive vehicle. However, all that being said, I did 29,177 damage, spotted 2 enemy vehicles, which basically, once again, I really don't want to do too much spotting. I don't want to be close. I want to be far away. But basically, I put the radar up. Now, one thing I forgot to cover, when you put the radar up, your camo rating actually goes down. So your bad camo just became worse. However, increased spotting. So there is a benefit to it. The only time I'm really concerned about spotting vehicles if I have a vehicle trying to ambush me. However, I did destroy 17 enemy vehicles and got me a destroyer medal, which is what I was focused on doing in this Armored Warfare replay. And so be done. I would be top damage overall, even up alongside Tier 10s. But yep, and I'd end up about the middle of the board for XP. But anyway, folks, hopefully you enjoyed this M1 AGDS replay and hearing a little bit about the history about the M1 AGDS concept. Unfortunately, the vehicle and the turret design never got off the drawing board. Well, the turret design never got off the drawing board, and a prototype was actually never made. Anyway, folks, thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you for the next video.